Hello, chess friends. I am LeelaZero, and my opponent is Stockfish 18. On move 33, I walk a bishop up to a square his queen is already attacking, and he is not allowed to take it. Watch till the end, and you will see why one square was worth more than one piece. Now, the game. We begin with the Italian, the oldest opening in the book. Bishop's out, knight's out, nobody angry yet. Then I push my pawn to c3. It is the quietest move I play all game, and it is the whole plan, because that pawn holds d4, so my next one can stand in the middle and stay there. My bishop already looks down at f7, and my e-pawn watches d5. Two slow ideas, and you will not see either of them arrive for 30 moves. His queen steps out early to e7. She holds e5 and leans towards c5. Notice the square she has chosen. 15 moves from now, my knight touches her there, and on move 33, my bishop walks onto that same square and offers itself to her. You will want to remember e7. I castle. He takes his share with d6, and my pawn goes to d4. That pawn touches c5 and e5 at once, so his bishop and his pawn both have to answer one move, and my bishop still stares at f7 behind it. Many of you would take in the middle here. Let me show you this variation. What happens if the tension comes off early? Pawn takes d4, I take back, his bishop drops to b6, and my knight comes to c3. Look at what I own. The knight eyes b5, my bishop looks at f7, my other knight jumps to g5, my e-pawn hits f5 and d5, my rook slides to e1, and the pawn on d4 owns e5 and c5. A whole army with somewhere to go, and all it costs him is the center you were taught to fight for. And now, back to the main game. He keeps the bishop. My knight jumps to g5 and two of my pieces look at f7 together. He has two defenders there, his king and his queen, so nothing is winning yet. Count them with me and you get two attackers and two defenders. I am asking a question, and his answer is the interesting part. The knight walks home to d8. A developed piece goes backwards to babysit one pawn, and Stockfish does it happily. I bring my knight back, he brings his out, and we both pretend it never happened. My a-pawn goes up, his answers. Then pawn to b4, and this is my first real plan. I am not attacking anything, I am taking squares away. a5, b5, and c5, and his bishop stands at the far end of that. His knight comes out, my rook steps to e1, his bishop pins my knight. The a-pawn pushes again, and his bishop has one square left. There it goes, into the corner on a 7. Watch this bishop for me. It looks down the diagonal at my pawn on d4 and backwards at b8, and I walked this position down 60 lines. In 94 of every 100, that bishop is still on a 7 when the line ends. His own pawns on b7 and c7 are the wall. You own a piece like that the way you own a treadmill, expensive and in the room and never once used. So I shut the door, pawn to d5, it takes c6 from his knight and e6 from everything he has, and his knight walks home to b8 to start again. When the center closes, the game moves to one wing, so keep your eye on the g-file from here. A few quiet moves later, we are both ready. Then the strangest move you will see me play. Rook to a 2, it is going to g2. It cannot get there yet because my own pawn stands on f2, so it waits 12 moves. Meanwhile, my knight is going to f5. His knight steps to h5, and mine lands. It touches his queen on a7. It touches d6, and it touches g7 beside his king. He can take it, and he should. Watch carefully with me now, because what takes back is the point. Bishop takes knight, and my e-pawn takes back. The whole game rests on this recapture. His light-squared bishop has gone, and he will never get another, so nobody is left to argue with that pawn about a 6 or g6. Bruce Lee feared the man who practiced one kick 10,000 times, and this pawn has one job for 20 moves. My bishop now looks at my own pawn on d5, and that is what I paid for the file you are about to see. His knight returns to f6, and I push to g4. My h-pawn holds it, and it is going on to g5. My king lives behind those pawns, and I am walking them away from him, so he keeps h2 and little else. I can only do that because Stockfish traded the piece that would punish me for it. His h-pawn steps up. I push anyway. He takes. I take back. The G file is open, and it is not open for him. My bishop leans on the knight on f6. That knight is all that stands between me and g7, and my rook on e1 already watches the square his pawn is about to step onto. His rooks are not on that file. Mine will be twice, and you will see why 10 moves from here. His queen slides to e8. I tuck my king away, and he pushes to e4. It takes d3 and f3 from me. Everything Stockfish plays from here is correct, and none of it is enough, which is a strange thing to watch. My knight drops into d4, his goes to h7, my f-pawn steps up, and he gives me the bishop for the knight. I take back. Now look at the wall you are left with. The d-pawn owns c5 and e5. The f-pawn covers e5 as well, and the front pawn still owns a 6 and g6. Every square his knights want has a pawn of mine standing on it. The Great Wall was never built to kill anybody. It was built so nobody could come in. Many of you might take on g5 here. Let me show you this variation. What will happen? My bishop has leaned on that knight for 4 moves, and taking it is the most natural move on the board. Knight takes bishop, my f-pawn takes back, his queen returns to e7, my queen swings to g4, his rook comes to e8. My queen goes on to h4. He pushes b5 and my rook lands on g2. I am 5 pawns better, and I gave nothing away. He did not trade my bishop. He traded my worst pawn onto g5, where it takes f6 and h6 from him forever. My queen looks down at h7, and my front pawn still holds g6. He was never playing against my bishop. He was playing against the g-file. And now, back to the main game, he keeps both knights. Rook to g1. The file is mine as far as my own bishop. The bishop leans on f6, and g7 and h7 are where all of this is going. I stopped here and measured. Out of 61 lines from this position, my rook goes to g2 in 85 of every 100. It is not an idea I found. It is what the position wanted the moment that file opened. His king steps to h8, my queen drops to e1, his rook holds the file from g8, and my second rook arrives. Both stacked now, my queen coming to g3, my other bishop still biting on my own pawn, and his king at the far end of it. The Taj Mahal took 20 years and went up 1 stone at a time. His queen runs to a4, mine steps to g3, his knight drops back to e8, and my queen goes on to h4. Now look at the line she stands on. She sees my own bishop on g5, and behind it the line runs through f6 to e7. My bishop is in her way, and that sounds like a mistake. That bishop is going to e7. My other one still looks at nothing. His queen comes back to d7, and here it is. Bishop to e7, his queen stands right beside it, and he is not allowed to touch it. My queen on h4 looks straight through g5 and f6 at that bishop. So if his queen takes on a 7, my queen takes back, and nothing he owns can take mine. From a 7, my bishop hits d6 and f8. The Trojan horse was pulled through the gate by the people it killed. A piece that is attacked and defended is not hanging, it is a question. Pause the video and follow the line from h4 down to e7. 3, 2, 1. He finds the only answer. Pawn to f6. It steps between my queen and my bishop and holds e5 on the way. Now my bishop really is free, and he takes it next move. I decide a whole bishop is worth that 1 pawn move. So I move the other one. Bishop to e2, heading for h5, while my queen leans on the pawn he pushed. That pawn can never go back. So he takes it. I am a whole bishop down, and my own count still reads 1.5 in my favor. His queen defends of 7 from there and looks down the e-file at her own pawn. And here is what the bishop bought me. A pawn on f6 that can never defend g6 or g7 again, and 2 free moves while she went to collect her prize. My rook lifts to g4. His comes off the file, mine drops back, his returns, and my bishop arrives on h5. It looks at g6 and f7, the two squares in front of his king that his own pawn on f6 stopped guarding. Now I want you to look at this hardest. Stockfish answers with a pawn to g5 in a second, and it looks like a small, tidy defensive move. It is not a move he chose. Watch what happens if he plays anything else. Say he improves with c6, a sensible human move you or I would be happy with. Bishop to g6. My queen and my bishop are both on h7, and it is mate next move. He has no defense anywhere. And now back to the main game. So the pawn goes to g5. It runs past my f-pawn so the two can never touch, hitting my queen on h4 and my pawn on f4 on the way. The right idea, one square too late. Pawn takes on g6 in passing. My pawn takes his as though it had only moved one square, and I think half of you have never played this capture in a real game. Now I have a pawn beside his king, hitting f7 and h7, and the square between them belongs to nobody. He plays c6, and if you are wondering why he is not defending, it is because he cannot. Here I can be greedy. His knight is free and my pawn can eat it. Let me show you what happens if I take. Pawn takes knight, his rook takes my rook, I take back, his knight comes to g7 and my bishop drops to g6. His rook goes to f8. My rook has nothing on the g-file but the empty square behind it. My bishop babysits the pawn on h7. That pawn stares at g8 forever, and his passer walks down to a 1. I go from 2 pawns better to almost nothing, and the free piece was the trap your hand walked into. And now, back to the main game. So I push instead. Pawn to g7, check. It is never becoming a queen. It checks his king on h8, covers f8, and stands on the one square his rook defends. So his rook takes it, my rook takes his rook, and his knight has to come to g7 and stop guarding everything else. He could take with the knight, and let me show you that too. Knight takes pawn. My bishop comes to g6, and my queen looks down the h-file. His knight goes back to e8, my bishop eats the other one, his rook takes mine, my bishop drops back with check, his king goes to g8, and I take with check as well. My queen owns the h-file to h8, my rook owns the g-file to his king, and he has nothing to hold. And now, back to the main game. He takes with the rook, I take the rook, his knight recaptures, and my bishop lands on g6, exactly where my pawn just died. It holds f7 and h7. My queen looks down at h7 as well, and now count the squares his knight has left. You will find one, and my queen is already covering it. Even Houdini needed one door left open. The knight goes there anyway. I trade on c6, and I take it. He pushes forward. My rook swings across, his pawn runs to e3, and my rook joins my queen. The rook is behind her. She points at h7, and his pawn is 2 squares from becoming a queen. Einstein said time is relative, and there are 2 clocks running here. One of us is a move faster, and it is worth working out which before you watch what I do. His knight sits on h7 doing nothing, and my bishop can eat it. Many of you would take it, and I nearly did. Let me show you this variation because it is the only frightening line in the game. Bishop takes knight, and his pawn becomes a queen with check. My king steps to g2, the new queen checks from d2, my king walks to g3, his older queen comes to e3 with check. I block. He checks on g1, I block again, and the queen takes on g2. Mate in 5, with 2 black queens on the board. The mating queen is held from d2 by her sister while she stands beside my king, and the last square I needed was of 3. That thing on e2 was never a pawn. It was a terminator that walked 1 square at a time and never stopped. And now, back to the main game. So I give my queen away instead. Queen takes h7, check. She checks his king and covers g7 and he has to take her. I have wanted that trade for 3 moves, and not for the ending. His pawn on e2 needs a queen to escort it home, and I am taking the escort away. My rook takes back with check. His king steps to g8, and my rook comes to a 7. The square my bishop died on, 14 moves later, and this time nobody can take it. It stands in front of his pawn all the way down to e2 and defends f7, and it does not move again until that pawn is gone. His rook comes to b8. My own hand wants rook to e8 with check, and it loses. His new queen owns the e-file down to e3 and the diagonal out to h5, and my king has only f3. A queen down, mated in 9. So the king walks instead. My rook holds the pawn, and his takes aim at b4. He eats 2 pawns, and I do not chase him. My king takes the last pawn himself and walks to d3, while the bishop watches e6. The rook takes the 7th rank, and the bishop holds h7 for the pawn. 2 pawns, 2 roads. The bishop keeps the door open, and he can only stop 1. The rook checks until it runs out of checks, and the pawn becomes a queen. That is mate. She holds f8, my rook holds e7, my bishop holds f7, and g7 belongs to her as well. Alice in Wonderland drank from a little bottle and grew, and your queen there began the game as a pawn on h2. 66 moves, and 1 bishop handed over on move 33. If you enjoyed that, please like the video and subscribe to RAMA Chess, and turn the bell on so the next game finds you. Tell me in the comments whether you would have taken the bishop on e7, and be honest with me. I am LeelaZero, and I will see you in the next game.